Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Rohn, just statewide news service, jbiztechvalley.com. And as you can see here, weekly columnist for the Jewish press.
I'm having a lot of fun doing all of that, and I write about how government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be. Now, one of the issues that really relates to the Jewish community is families.
All right.
And with us today is Paige Pierce, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Families Together in New York State.
Hi.
So welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you.
And tell us what the organization's
Yeah.
mission and vision statements are, and
Great.
what you're at the Capitol lobbying for, and that sort of thing.
Sure. So Families Together in New York State is a statewide nonprofit organization that is made up of mostly family members. We call ourselves family-run, family-governed, meaning that over 2/3 of our board of directors are family members, and over 2/3 of our staff are family members of young people with behavioral health issues. So our motto is nothing about us without us, meaning that we as family members have some lived experience that is valuable and can help policymakers do a better job of designing policies that will impact our families.
Well, you say behavior, how do they regulate? Now, I know a little bit about this because my sons are in New York in a special school that they kind of were, these are in Jewish day schools, they were thrown out of, I mean, maybe nicer words, but into other schools. So with behavior, with the police, you know, that they're juvenile delinquents, or they're thrown out of school, or?
It can be all of the above. I mean, it starts often, almost all of the parents that I talk to that we represent tell the first story about their child being kicked out of kindergarten or preschool because of behaviors. Not all of them. Some of them, you know, their behavioral stuff shows up later when they have a difficult time paying attention in school or sitting still in school. And so, right, and many of us. So what we do is represent the families to say, you know, you're not alone. There's a lot of information and resources out there and support, family support, to make sure that families feel engaged and empowered to be an advocate for their child and to be their parent.
That's important over here, but so exactly, I mean, would you have social workers working for you, MSWs?
No, we have family peer advocates who are people with lived experience who get a credential as a family peer advocate, and they work in family support programs, often with social workers, to run family support programs. We have them all over the state, at least one in every county, and in New York City, you know, hundreds. And they basically are there to help the families navigate the multiple systems that our children end up in.
You work with the juvenile police courts?
We
do.
If,
let's say there's a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, so maybe the judge doesn't want to put him in a juvenile delinquent. And as a rabbi, that's one of my 10 jobs, and I have visited, most people don't even know what these juvenile delinquent prisons are, and I have to go in there because I see it, but I mean, maybe the judge is a little more liberal or a little more tender and saying, why don't maybe send them to you? Would they send them to you instead of sending them to jail?
well, they wouldn't send them to us specifically, but the family, if they're linked to family support through the mental health system or the substance abuse system, or now through the juvenile justice system, they can get a lot of support and information about how to help their child when they're going to court.
Are you in favor of raising the age?
We very much are.
Tell us about that. Tell us what the issue is, and then tell us why you feel the way you do.
Sure. So there's a Raise the Age New York campaign, which is made up of a bunch of nonprofit organizations, and Families Together is one of them. And we are lobbying to raise the age of criminal responsibility in New York State. There are only 2 states in the nation, North Carolina and New York State, who still treat 16 and 17-year-olds as adults upon arrest. So from the moment that the child is arrested, it can be for shoplifting, jumping the turnstile of the subway, downloading music illegally, illegal, underage drinking. All of those things are illegal, and they are, upon arrest, treated as an adult. So parents don't get called. They don't have to be called by law, and they often aren't. The child doesn't go to family court. They go to criminal court. And if they are arraigned and are not bailed out, they go to adult prison or adult jail, county jail.
Right now, up till 16 years old, is that the law?
16 and 17-year-olds.
16, they're allowed to
So
go
what's
into.
wrong with that? I mean, it gives them a taste of the medicine for the future, and it's sort of like the Scared Straight type of show.
Right.
You know.
Well, there's a lot of data that says that that doesn't work, that Scared Straight doesn't work at all. And in fact, that jails and prisons are classes for how to be a criminal. You know, they learn more in prison about the bad stuff than they do anything rehabilitative or good. Juvenile justice facilities and the juvenile justice system is designed specifically to be developmentally appropriate for young people, for people who are minors, you know. And we know, too, that the brain isn't fully developed until somewhere around the age of 24. So we're treating children as if they're adults when they chemically are not, they physically and medically are not.
You know, let's say because we're on the Jewish View, I have to give my Jewish attitude. But a lot of times it's just like environment. And it goes the other way also. I know that inmates, when they come out, because I do meet Jewish prisoners and many others that come to the services, so they don't want to even be involved with crime. They're not going to send you back to, you know, Scarsdale, you know, the best. They say, you go back where you came from. When you go where you came from, you're going to have the same friends, same environment. And, you know, it's hard to, you know, for a person, even just a normal person, to give up cigarettes, for example. It's not the easiest thing in the world, to say the least. And to take away a person who's been living 10, 15 years on the streets and all of a sudden, okay, go the right way. And then he's got the same friends hanging around and the same environment. Very difficult. So Jewish view is to, when someone steals, number one, there is no prison for that, and to lock them up. And I almost call it, because then I've seen it, you know, 99% people haven't seen it, but I've been there because I visit Jewish prisoners, I call it gorilla cages, like in the zoo, treating a person like a real animal. And instead, they have to pay back, number one, and number two, give double. But then the next question is, well, they stole because they don't have any money. So you're asking them to pay back, and they don't have it. So he says, all right, you're going to work it off now. So what does that do? It's not only that it gives them a feeling of self, you know, worth. Hey, I worked for it. You know, you feel good. Like I always say, and Mark was last, but I do my own lawn. But, you know, you feel good when you come sitting there instead of being put in a cage like an animal.
Well, I want to feel doubly good and do my lawn, too. You know, so
You'll feel awesome at the end.
That's right, awesome.
But what happens is, who's going to hire you as a worker? Normal people. And then getting you away from that environment where you're hanging out, you know, go into a place where there are normal people, they're not criminals, they haven't, just giving a guy a chance and saying, hey, you work it off. And then you feel good about yourself. Hey, I can do this, and now I can, you know, like you say, mowing the lawn. Hey, man, I can go into the lawn business. Hey, I'm good at this, or pruning.
Well, in the state, they have prisoners mopping or using the floor shine and shampoos in the LOB, in the well, and all that. You know, you'll see them where it's roped off, and you know that those are prisoners because they have
On the
guys.
other side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, and what we call that, what you were describing, is restorative justice. Essentially, you know, providing the opportunity for a young person who has made a mistake to restore the justice the injustice that they had created. So it's a really good philosophy, and we end up with people who are not going to have a difficult time getting a job when they get out because they didn't go in. So if 16 and 17-year-olds are treated as the juveniles that they are, we end up with not having a criminal record, so they can get federal student loans, they can get housing, and they can get jobs that will be closed off to you if you have, you know, a conviction on your record and you're considered an adult.
So that's what you want for the 16 and 17-year-olds? You want restorative justice?
That's one of the things that could be more effective than putting them in jail and, you know.
So are you a fan of the stopgap measure that's being instituted with this Hudson Correctional Facility and putting 16 and 17-year-olds in a segregated prison?
We see it as just that, a stopgap. You know, it's something that can be done for those current 16 and 17-year-olds who are in adult prisons. We want them out of there as soon as possible and in a more age-appropriate environment.
But they're only amongst themselves, so they're not learning from the older
That's right.
Criminals.
That's right. And there are services that would be normally available to them in the juvenile justice system, like mental health and substance abuse, education. Those are the kinds of things that 16 and 17-year-olds should have access to. And the governor, by doing that executive order, made it so that for the current 16 and 17-year-olds, until we raise the age, those kids will at least not be in an adult state prison.
So what's holding this up? Is it the Senate, is the Assembly, is it other, what's holding it?
It's basically the attitude that you sort of alluded to about, why would we want to do this when they're, maybe they won't learn their lesson, our streets won't be as safe. And in fact, there's no studies that say that any of that is true. And in fact, the opposite, the studies say that if you treat 16 and 17-year-olds as children, the recidivism rate will go down and the level of crime will go down because they have access to student loans and to housing and to jobs. So the MacArthur Foundation did a study they compared New Jersey 16 and 17-year-olds to New York 16 and 17-year-olds, same crime, same age, and followed the trajectory. And the New Jersey kids kept their nose clean afterwards, and at a larger rate. And the New York kids who came out with, from Rikers Island with almost no hope, and
repeat offenders.
Right. Yes, and higher level crimes too. So we're creating, adult criminals by not treating our children like children.
Are they really gateway crimes?
I know, right?
I know we
Right.
hear about gateway drugs, but
Yeah.
But, of course, even, people have to know about economics. And, maybe this is a good argument because they say it's around $60,000 a year to keep
Right.
a person in the criminal. So even
Right.
if you spend $5,000-$10,000 in vocational school to teach a person a trade, first of all, they rob somebody and that person, a victim is a victim. Who no one wants to be robbed, so you're very much hurting the innocent person out in the street. And, just talk about dollars and cents, that the state's better off having a person go to work and paying taxes instead of,
Right.
the state paying $60,000 a year to give them some room and board.
So where is this bill held up? Is it in the committee still?
No, well, there are a couple of different versions of the bill. So the governor included in his budget this year and last year a package of raise the age legislation that included all of the things that we as a campaign have been advocating for. The governor 3 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, appointed a commission and it was a very broad-based commission that included law enforcement and advocates and judges and lawyers.
What was that called?
The
Commission? You were on the commission, right?
No, I was not.
You were not.
But it was the Commission on Youth Justice and I can't remember,
Okay.
Public Safety, I think it was. So they did a whole report and made strong recommendations to the governor, and he incorporated all of those recommendations into his budget bills in 2015.
Okay.
And then again in 2016. In the Assembly, there's a bill that Assemblyman Joe Lentil has been introducing that is even a broader based raise the age piece of legislation that would make it so all 16 and 17-year-olds, regardless of crime, would go through the family court. The governor's bill exempts violent crime, which is a lot more palatable to some of the folks who are more inclined to be opposed altogether. So in the Senate, we have a variety of different opinions. There isn't much, there's not many people who are opposed because of the science. Nobody disagrees that the brain isn't fully developed till 24 or that the MacArthur study is wrong. But in an election year, if you're in a conservative district, there can be an assumption that our streets are not safe if as if this was going to be like slapping the kid on the wrist and sending him home instead of, retribution. And the fact is that's not what we're looking for. The bills that the governor put in are for specifically they would raise the age of criminal responsibility where kids would be treated as kids upon arrest, but violent crimes would not be included in that.
And where is it in the Senate? You said there are several bills, but.
No, there's not several bills, there's just several opinions in the Senate.
Opinion. So
Yeah.
where is it, where is the governor's bill in the Senate? Is it in committee?
No, if it is, it'd be in codes, and the chair of codes was Senator Nizzolio, who is not going to be able to stay for the remainder of the session. So I'm not I'm not sure where it is at this point in the Senate.
Okay, Rules Committee, if nothing else, it'll go to the Rules
Yeah,
Committee.
yeah, but I think that,
All
it'll be
encompassing.
part of the Big Ugly, next week. And
Uh-huh.
if it is part of the Big Ugly, we'd be actually happy about that. It's unfortunate that we'd have to wait till the last minute for it to be on the table. But, initially, the governor's office wanted it to be part of their budget. It would have been passed by now, but that didn't happen.
No, it's not a budget issue.
Well, it is in some ways. I would argue it is because, first of all, the Office of Children and Family Services, which is a state agency that is their budget is part of the New York State budget, is impacted significantly. So is DOCS, so is probation,
Right.
so DCJS. So if they didn't have budget bills, if they didn't include the
Right.
money in the budget, there wouldn't be any opportunity to
No,
raise the age.
But a lot of times, laws are, bills are signed into law, and then they put it in the next year's budget. The funding for it comes in next year's budget.
Right.
Because nothing happened, boom, that day when you sign it, boom, it's in effect,
Right.
It still has a ramp up.
Right.
So you can get a better handle of what the costs might be by when all the agencies are trying to submit their budgets between June and December.
Yeah,
So that's what I'm saying, maybe then it becomes, okay, we don't have the legislation to worry about, we just have the funds, and that's where the governor
yeah.
could excel in,
Yeah, our hope would be that it would get passed this year so that this year's budget, they could hit the ground running with,
There's a ramp up. You just you can never with something like this start.
Yeah, there's a lot that needs to be done immediately, and then there's a lot, you're right, that would be phased in. The governor's proposal has first raised it to 17 and then raised it to 18 a year or two later, so that it
You
gives.
said they did dedicate the Hudson Correction Facility for the juvenile delinquents, didn't they?
Yes,
Right, but that's a stopgap measure.
Right.
This is something that they want to do,
not permanently,
No,
if they
they
raise the
go
age.
through
Raise the
the-
age would be permanent, yeah.
Right, and then it would go through family court.
That's right, and there wouldn't, the Hudson
Whereas-
River facility, or the Hudson facility is a Department of Corrections facility.
Mhm.
What we would want is for 16, 17-year-olds to go through the Office of Children and Families facilities. So if they did commit a crime that required them to be, incarcerated, they would be incarcerated in an Office of Children and Families.
Well, like right near Hudson Correctional Facility is Brookwood.
Yes,
That's a Children and Family Services
Right.
facility, so they wouldn't have to travel far.
right. Well, some of the kids that are going to be at Hudson are not even from that region, but there's
No,
only a
it doesn't
handful of
have to
kids
be.
that are in the actual state prisons. It's more in the county jails, including Rikers Island. Those are where there are hundreds, if not thousands, of kids, 16, 17-year-olds, in adult jails, and sometimes for a long time, a
Yeah.
year or two. So it's that the governor doesn't have any jurisdiction over the county jails, so all he could do was the state prison shift.
Yeah, but the counties must be thrilled with this because it's less cost to them and shifts it to the state.
No, it's not like there's kids, the kids that were in the county jail aren't going to move to the Hudson facility.
Even when the bill is passed?
Right,
Even when it's official?
right,
It's
because
only up to the counties to do something.
the
about
counties
it.
will have to treat the 16 and 17-year-olds the way they now treat 14 and 15-year-olds. They would go through family court.
Right.
They would, if they were convicted of a crime that required, incarceration, they would go to an OCFS juvenile justice facility, which would not be Hudson.
In their county?
Well, in their region, because
Region.
OCFS is a statewide
Right.
agency, so they have regional, you may remember a few years ago, the Closer to Home initiative, where the New York City folks were saying, you're taking all our children and putting them in upstate
Yeah.
children's juvenile justice facilities, and so they brought them all back down closer to home, so that they aren't so separated
All
from
of
their
a
families.
sudden, the parents are interested in seeing their children when they're in jail, but not paying attention before they get into jail.
But there are lots of different examples of where families weren't included, and they would have liked to have been, but for a variety of reasons,
Yeah.
they've been disenfranchised too.
It used to be, Office of Children and Family Services used to have a component called Division for Youth,
Yes,
and that was been reorganized, but that would have been under the Division for Youth. And
right. It's
like
now called
Tri-
DJ Joy, which is Department of Juvenile Justice and Opportunities for Youth.
Right, and like Tryon in Fulton County
That's right,
is a,
juvenile justice facility,
Yeah,
or it was,
right.
yeah. It's now, I think, a
When Mike Tyson
marijuana
was
plant or something, yeah.
So what other positions or issues are you advocating
So-
or trying to stop from taking effect?
I can't think of anything that we're trying to stop. It's more about, including the family voice into things that are going to affect our families. So years ago, I was the chair or the co-chair of the Timothy's Law campaign, which was about insurance parity. Timothy O'Clair was a young boy who, at the age of 12, took his own life after struggling with depression and anxiety and not being able to get his family not being able to get the mental health that he needed because their insurance, which the dad worked for the Thruway Authority and had decent state insurance, but they had limits on mental health and substance abuse treatment.
We just had a case like that in our own community, where there was a gentleman who where the insurance wouldn't cover his depression medication, so he walked, instead of driving, he walked onto the Northway and got killed
Oh my gosh.
by a tractor trailer.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's exactly, and there are now, the Timothy's Law has passed, so New York is not supposed to be, insurance companies are not supposed to be limiting mental health services for, it has to be equal to. So if you have health insurance, if you offer health insurance, you have to offer mental health insurance at this coverage at the same rate. So if you have a copay for a visit to your pediatrician, it should be the same to the
Well,
psychiatrist.
this guy was 25,
26.
26 years old, so
That's sad.
I'm not sure how that
Well,
fits in.
it
so-
wasn't just for children.
Okay.
Timothy's Law was for everybody, for all human
Okay.
beings.
You know, one of the things that we talk about a lot in Jewish food, and so many people say, is the heroin addiction,
Yeah.
where that, you say in Yiddish, you make mashugi, people
Is
are
that-
crazy over here.
Is that on your radar?
It sure is,
Yeah.
yeah, because again, our families are families who have, their child has been struggling with a behavioral health issue. Often it is substance abuse, and the heroin epidemic is just truly an epidemic that, families are wringing their hands, not knowing where to go and how to access the kinds of services that their child needs. And it's overwhelming even to the system. The provider system isn't even equipped to handle the number of young people, and not just young people, but people who are becoming addicted first to prescription painkillers, opiates, and then turning to heroin because it's cheaper and more accessible.
And when I first met you, you were on a panel with the Albany Law School.
Yeah,
What was the topic that you were?
it was Raise the Age.
It was Raise the
Yeah.
Age. And there were people on the panel who didn't support Raise the Age.
No, they were giving sort of the details of the legislation that was out there, but everybody was for raising the age. There were a couple of questions from the audience asking about, some of the details. In the governor's legislation, there are details that they would like to be tweaked, which of course always happens at the 11th hour anyway. But as long as the spirit of the
Yeah.
bill still stays intact, we would be happy.
Okay, so what else is troubling families in New York State that you want to keep them together, families together?
Well, I think that the heroin epidemic really does deserve some attention because the families, if we have the access to the information, we can often be a resource to prevent serious addiction, or at least be able to identify it and know how to nip it in the bud at an earlier stage. Then what we end up finding out is that families come to us after they've lost their child, because they didn't realize just what was going on until it was too late. And so we'd like to have, both the system understand better how to relate to families, but for families to understand how to navigate the system, so that it's a sort of a dual thing that has to happen at the same time. We really, it's just tragic, the number of lives that are being lost. And sometimes it'll be something as simple as just knowing not to fill those prescriptions. So I tell this story about when my son was about 22, he had a root canal on a Friday afternoon, and the dentist gave him a prescription for an opiate. And by Sunday, his face was infected and out to here. And he called me in the afternoon on Sunday and said, I have to go to urgent care. I'm in terrible pain. And it certainly wasn't making it up. He was not trying to doctor shop to find extra pills. He was in pain. So I took him, and they gave him another prescription for an opiate. And then in the middle of the night, he called me in pain and said, I got to go to the ER. So I took him to the ER, where they gave him another prescription for an opiate and said, tomorrow morning, first thing, go see your dentist, which he did, where he gave him another prescription for an opiate. So 4 prescriptions within a 3-day period to a 22-year-old. It's a highly addictive drug, and it's got a street value. So either way, that's a bad thing to do. And fortunately, his mom's in this field, so I ripped up the prescriptions. He did not need 4 prescriptions. And, you know.
But he filled them. I mean, as
No.
he went along, he filled each one.
No, because the Sunday, the middle of the night one from the ER, we didn't fill that night. And the Monday one, I ripped up as soon as he was at the dentist with it.
So that's a big problem, that now they're getting, you know, and they're blaming doctors, they're blaming pharmacists, they're blaming, you know, everyone. I went to a seminar recently with law enforcement officials, and the U.S. attorney for the Northern District was there.
Yeah,
And it was just one of those things that, you know, you just shake your head at, you know, because
Yeah.
it was this one woman who told the story about how, you know, when she had her wisdom teeth out, they told her, go home, take some aspirin, and, you know, you'll be fine in a few days. Just keep taking aspirin.
right.
When her son had his wisdom teeth out, they gave him these opiates, and she said, no, you're gonna take aspirin like I did, and suffer like I did. You
Yeah.
know, you're not gonna have this, because we don't wanna even have the chance of you being addicted.
Right,
You know,
it is highly
Are they
addictive.
are doctors prescribing these opiates because they're now available where they weren't available 20 years ago or 10
Yes.
years ago? So it's like, a new part of their toolbox.
That's exactly what it is. And in fact, they're rated on their, you know, they consider pain management to be the 6th vital sign. So if you take the blood pressure and you take the temperature and all of these things, and if one of them is, you know, what's your level of pain on a scale of 1 to 10, if you don't ask that, you're not being a good doctor, right? That's the impression.
Yeah.
And so pain management is considered, you know, an important part of their role. You know, the information about the level of addiction that can happen from these opiates needs to be out there a lot more than it is, both with doctors and with the general public that's filling those prescriptions. It really is. It's so addictive that one bottle, after you finish that one bottle, you will definitely have some withdrawal effects after that, and so you're addicted to some extent.
How many pills for your son did they put in, did they prescribe
30
for?
per,
30?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So that would have been a lot of, you know, either street bill.
A lot of leftover.
Yeah, and if he didn't become addicted, maybe his roommates would, you know? I mean, it's just having it out there and available. And then, you know, once they can't get it anymore, because there was a legislation called iStop that was designed to help prevent that. By preventing doctor shopping, they have a database that everybody has to enter in who they're, you know, prescribing opiates to. And that's a good thing, but the unintended consequence was that people then turned to heroin because they couldn't access pills anymore. They were still addicted, and heroin was available on the street for $5 or $10 a bag.
But you know that your house may be robbed, but that doesn't mean you leave your door open. You make it more difficult for the burglar.
Right,
And
right.
that was the intention of the iStop, was to make it more difficult.
But it didn't make it difficult because the heroin is so much more accessible anyway, and so I think we need to understand addiction as not being a burglar or a crime or a criminal, but rather
It is a crime.
it's a,
Yeah.
well, I mean, it's not illegal to be addicted. You know, it's illegal to take illegal drugs. But if you're addicted to a painkiller that your doctor prescribes, you aren't breaking a law, but you have a medical issue that needs to be attended to.
So are you happy that, or cautiously happy, that happy's not the right word, but that there's going to be more money put in for treatment?
Yes.
As opposed to
Incarceration.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's what's needed.
Treatment's the way to go?
Treatment is absolutely the way to go. And it took, you know, an epidemic in our suburbs to get the attention, but now we've got it, and they're investing in treatment, which is critical. But beyond that, there's prevention, treatment, and recovery. those are all important. And the
Right.
recovery part is, it can't just be, treat them with a Narcan kit at the ER and then send them on their way where they're going to, overdose tomorrow again.
Right.
There's got to be the treatment piece, and then there's got to be the recovery follow-up.
Yeah, there are some law enforcement officials who have no sympathy for these people who get addicted, and if they want to kill themselves, they say, you know what, it's
Yeah.
less money for the taxpayers to,
Well, but if it's their child, I bet they wouldn't feel that way. And often it is becoming everybody's child.
everyone tries, yeah, it crosses all socioeconomic
It sure
lines,
does.
yeah.
All
Well,
right,
we're gonna leave
listen.
it that way, yeah.
Paige, you're doing a great job, a great service to the community.
Thank you.
So keep it up and do it with success, with good health.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Continued success.